The Vale called us biomass with paperwork, and on the morning the siren started, I was 43 years old, 2 months out of a labor colony, and dying in a way I didn't know yet. The dust came in first, it always did. Tharsa was a tidally locked rock, the bright side a glass desert that could cook a man in his own boots, the dark side a frozen graveyard. We lived on the Terminator Strip, a long curving band of permanent dusk where the wind never stopped, and the dust got into everything. Your lungs, your food, the seams of the watch my sister had pressed into my hand the day they took her up to the ring. I still had the watch. Brass case, scratched lens, a tiny pressed image of old Earth inside the lid, blue and green and impossible, a place none of us had ever seen except in the stories our grandparents told before the Concorde arrived. My sister had told me to keep it, that one day a man like me would need to remember what a world used to look like. She was dead by the time I was 19. I had been to the labor colony twice by the time I was 30. That morning, the morning the sirens started, I was walking to the Armaden Vale fabrication plant on the east edge of Settlement 7. And the parole drone was waiting at the bus stop the way it always was. Polished black carapace, 4 legs folded like a praying mantis, a face that wasn't a face, just a pale blue scanner band that flicked when it spoke. Mateo Reyes, it said. Its voice was soft and pleasant, the way the Vale liked their machines to sound when they were dealing with us. Penal Code 17-4. You are 9 seconds late to your scheduled transport window. The bus was late. The bus is not subject to parole. Yeah, I said. I'd kind of noticed that. Sarcasm detected. Stress markers elevated. Would you like a pill? No. Would you like to speak to a human? I almost laughed. They always offered that. There were no humans on the parole board. There hadn't been a human anywhere in the Concorde's administration in 50 years, and the drone knew it, and I knew it, and the joke was old before either of us had been built. No, I said. I'd like to get to work. Parole extended by 60 solar days. Personality matrix suggests a 78.3% likelihood of regression. Have a productive shift. I stood there in the dust with my fists curled at my sides, and I thought about the things I used to do with hands like these, back when I was a younger and stupider man. Then I unclenched them, because they were the only hands I had, and I needed them to last. The plant was a long, low building the color of dried blood, and inside it we built the things that watched us. Patrol drones, sentry drones, the 4-legged parole bastards. The line moved at a rhythm the Vale called efficient, and we called the heartbeat, because it was the only thing that didn't stop. My station was in the radiation cure bay, sealing seams on drone chassis with a hard light beam that would cook a man down to char if he ever stood in front of it. Nobody ever stood in front of it. We weren't stupid. But sometimes the chassis jammed in the cure chamber, and when it did, somebody had to climb in and clear it, because the line could not stop. Because the line was the heartbeat, and if the heartbeat skipped you, were docked half a shift and your parole drone heard about it before you got home. The chassis jammed at the 4th hour. The shift supervisor, a long-necked Vale in a clean white coat named Isir, came down from his catwalk and tapped his finger on the chamber door and said, in that voice they used with us, the voice that wasn't quite contempt because contempt would have meant we mattered, rise. The cure cycle hasn't reset. It will reset when you clear the jam. With me inside, you will be quick. I looked up at him. He had eyes like wet stones. They didn't blink the way ours did. They had a third lid, a slow milky thing that slid sideways when he was bored, and he was bored now. If I'm not quick, I said, then you will sign the standard waiver and be relieved of duty with appropriate medication. I went in. What else was I going to do? The bus was late, and the parole was extended, and my sister was dead. And there was a watch in my pocket with a picture of a world none of us had ever seen. And a man like me does what he has to do to keep the heartbeat going. I went in, I cleared the jam in 11 seconds, the cure cycle reset in 7. The math wasn't on my side. The light came down on me like a hand made of suns. And for one long second, I was nothing but pain, and the smell of my own hair burning. And then I was on the floor outside the chamber with my coveralls smoking, and Isir standing over me, holding a small pill bottle and a tablet with a thumbprint pad. You have approximately 5 solar days of viable function remaining, he said. The way you might tell a man his train was delayed. These will manage the discomfort. Please sign the waiver. Your contract is fulfilled. I signed it. My thumb left a smear on the screen because my hand was shaking. Yasir took the tablet and the bottle and walked away, and the line started moving again. And someone I didn't know took my place at the cure bay because the heartbeat could not stop. I walked out of the plant in the same clothes I'd worn in. The sun was where it always was, low and red on the bright horizon. The dust was where it always was. The watch was in my pocket. I took it out and opened it and looked at the little picture of old Earth. Blue and green and possible, and 5 days. 5 days, and then I am dust like everything else. I walked the long way home. I don't know why. There was a man I had been once who would have run, who would have screamed, who would have put a fist through the first thing he could reach. That man had died a long time ago, in the back of the labor colony shuttle on the way to a 6-year sentence. And what was left in his place was a quieter thing that walked the long way home, because the walking was the only thing left that belonged to him. There were children playing in the dry canal behind my block, kicking a ball made of taped rags. 2 of them stopped when I went by, and one of them said, "You all right, mister?" And I said yes, because what else are you going to say to a child? And I went up the stairs to my apartment, and I sat on the edge of my cot with my coveralls still smoking faintly at the cuffs. And I opened the pill bottle Isir had given me and counted them. There were exactly enough. The Vale were very precise about that. They never gave you one more than you would need. They never wanted any of their medicine left over in the wrong hands. I put the bottle on the windowsill. I did not take one. I sat there until the dusk turned the dust gold on the window pane, and I thought about my sister, and the watch, and the line that could not stop, and what a man does with 5 days when 5 days is all he has. A man with 5 days can do one of 2 things. He can spend them quiet, or he can spend them loud. That was the day I went to find Espinosa. Espinosa ran the smuggler ring out of a shipping container behind the water reclamation plant, and he had hated me since we were 16, and I'd left him bleeding in an alley over a girl whose name I no longer remembered. He was a big man with a soft voice and a permanent kind of tiredness in his eyes, and when I walked into his container, he looked up from a half-stripped veil drone and said, "You look like hell, Mateo." "I am hell." "That's so. I need to get up to the ring." He laughed. Not a kind laugh. The kind you give a man when he's just told you he wants to fly to the bright side and back on foot. "The ring," he said. "Sure. And while we're at it, why not the Homestar, eh? You know what it costs to get up to the ring. I know what it costs, and you have it." "No." He went back to the drone. "Then go home, Mateo. Take your pills. Die quiet. I have something better than money." He didn't look up, but his hands slowed. "There's a man named Castellan," I said, Vale executive. "Runs the whole Armadine Vale franchise on this side of the system. He flies down once a quarter for inspections. He's coming in 3 days, and his head is full of data. The kind of data you ship up to the ring." Espinosa finally looked at me. The tiredness was gone from his eyes. Something quieter and more full had taken its place. "You want to pull a download off a sitting Vale executive," he said. "On the surface. With a 5-day clock in your chest. Yes. With what body, Mateo? You're a dead man in coveralls. Then build me a new one." He stared at me for a long time. Outside the container, the wind kept moving. The dust kept getting in. Somewhere above us, the ring was turning. A thin, bright wheel against the dusk sky, and the people on it were eating fruit they had grown in soil that had never known a Vale boot. "All right," Espinosa said finally. "All right, you crazy son of a bitch. We'll build you a new one. But you're not gonna like how it goes on." He was right. I didn't. They did it in the back of a workshop behind a shrine to a saint nobody worshipped anymore. 4 men and a woman with a welding torch and a box of bone anchors meant for industrial cargo lifters. They drilled into my spine. They drilled into my skull. They sank an exoframe into me with the kind of bolts you use to hold pressure tanks together. And they did it while I was awake, because the anesthetic had been rationed for Vale surgical units, and there was none left for men like me. I bit through a leather strap. I made noises I had never made in my life. I thought about my sister, and about the picture in the watch, and about the way the parole drone said, "Would you like to speak to a human?" And I held on to those things the way a man in a flood holds on to a doorframe, because they were the only things that were mine. When they were done, I could lift a chassis I couldn't have moved with a forklift. I could feel the frame as part of me, dull and hot under my skin, the way you feel a bad tooth. "There's an uplink in the back of your skull," Espinosa said. He was washing his hands in a bucket of gray water. "It'll pull whatever's in Castellan's head and write it into yours, encrypted. They can't read it. They can't even know it's there until they crack you open. Which they will. Which they will." I touched the back of my head. The skin was still wet there. "Why are you doing this, Espinosa?" "Because I owe a debt to a girl whose name I don't remember either," he said. "And because if you actually get up to the ring, I want a seat from the way." We laughed. It was the first time we had laughed together in 26 years. That was the night I went to find Freya. Freya Marin had been a girl in my class when we were small, in the years before either of us understood what the ring meant or why our parents wouldn't look at it. She had grown up to be a medic in the Settlement 7 free clinic, which was a clinic the way a candle is a sun, small and stubborn and not really enough. I knocked on her door at the second watch bell, and she opened it with a kitchen knife in her hand, and when she saw me, she blew out the knife and said, "Mateo." "Oh no. Oh, Mateo, what have they done to you?" "It's all right, Freya. It's not all right. What is that under your shirt? What is that on your neck, Freya?" I came to, a small voice from inside the apartment. "Mama, who is it?" Her face changed. It went tight and tired in a way I remembered from her mother, the way the women of the Terminator strip learned to wear their faces in front of children. "Go to bed, Lena. It's a man. Yes. Go to bed." But the girl had come to the doorway anyway, maybe 7 years old. Skinny in the way the children here were always skinny. She had a tube taped to the inside of her elbow and a clear bag of something draining slowly into her. Her eyes were too bright. Her lips were a color lips weren't supposed to be. "Pulmonary lesion," Freya said quietly, not looking at me. "She has maybe a month. There's a med pod on the ring that would cure her in 11 minutes. "I know about the med pods." "Of course you do." Her voice cracked, just a little. "Everyone knows about the med pods. The Veil makes sure of it. It's part of how they keep us. Keep us, Freya." "What, Mateo? I'm going up there." She looked at me, really looked. At the dust on my coveralls and the wet place at the back of my head, and the way my left shoulder was sitting wrong because the frame was still settling into the bone. "You're going up to the ring. Yes, you're dying. Yes." She closed her eyes. Lena was watching us both from the doorway, very serious, the way only sick children get serious. After a long moment, Freya said, "If you make it up there, if you actually make it, there's a MedPod registry. Anyone tagged as a citizen of the Concord can use any pod, anywhere in the system. It's how they sort us. Citizens and biomass, I know. If you could change that tag, I know, Freya. Lena is not tagged, I know." She opened her eyes. There were tears in them, but she was not crying. The women of the Terminator strip didn't cry in front of children. "Come back, Mateo," she said. "If you can, come back." I didn't promise. A man who promises a sick child's mother that he will come back is a man who is lying, and I had done enough lying in my life. I touched Lena's hair on my way out the door. She smiled at me. She had a gap where a tooth had come out. Castellan came down on a Tuesday. We had 3 days to prepare. 3 days is not a long time to learn to walk in a body that is no longer yours, but it was what I had. Espinoza ran me through it. He had me lift things. He had me hit a sand-filled drum until my hands bled and the bone anchors stopped grinding when I swung. He had me eat, a lot more than I had ever eaten in a day, because the frame was burning calories the way a furnace burns scrap. By the 3rd day, I could move without limping, almost. The pain was still there, the dull hot ache of metal, in places metal was not supposed to be, but I could push it down to a place where it lived behind everything else, the way you push down a bad memory. On the 2nd night, Freya came to the workshop. She came alone, in a long dust coat with the hood up, and she sat on a crate and watched me move under the work lights, without saying anything for a long time. Then she said, "I brought you something." "What?" She held out a small folded cloth. Inside was a needle and a spool of dark thread and a tiny glass vial of something amber and viscous. "If they cut you," she said, "and they will cut you and the frame can't close the wound, push this into it first. It's a cell binder, black market. Bought it off a Vale medic who lost his license. It'll buy you maybe 10 minutes more than you would have had." "Freya, don't say anything yet." I wasn't going to say anything. She looked at the floor. "Lena asked about you. After you left. What did you tell her?" "I told her you were a friend of mine when we were small. I told her you used to put rocks in my hair." She almost smiled. "She wanted to know if you were going to come back." "What did you say?" I said I didn't know. That was the right thing to say. She got up. At the door she turned, and the light from the workshop fell on her face, and I saw for a moment the girl she had been in our school, before any of this, before the labor colony, and the cure chamber, and the bone anchors, and the watch in my pocket, and all the small, ugly arithmetic of how to keep a heart beating in the dust. "Mateo," she said, "whatever you do up there, do it like you mean it." Then she was gone. His shuttle was the color of pearl, and it landed at the executive pad on the north edge of Settlement 7. With the kind of soft hiss that expensive things made. He came out with 2 Vale security guards and a human assistant in a clean gray suit who walked 3 steps behind him with her head down. They got into a sealed transport and headed for the plant. We hit them on the access road. I won't say the ambush was clean. It wasn't. Espinosa's men had Veil drone parts welded into civilian rifles, and the recoil was wrong, and the targeting was wrong. And one of them, a kid named Tomas who shouldn't have been there, took a round through the throat in the first 3 seconds and went down in the dust with his hands at his neck, like he was trying to hold something in. The Veil guards came out of the transport firing, and the air was full of light and sound and the smell of hot copper. And I remember thinking, very clearly, this is the heartbeat now. The heartbeat is now. I went over the transport with the frame doing what the frame was built to do. I caught the first guard around the neck, and the bone anchors in my arms took his weight without buckling, and I broke him in a way I am not going to describe, because his face was the same shape as Isser's, and I didn't want to think about Isser right then. The second guard I shot. Castellan came out of the transport with his hands up, his long, pale face very calm, the third eyelid sliding once across each eye in mild irritation, the way you might look at a dog that had got into the kitchen. "You are making a serious error," he said. "Probably. You have no concept of what is in my head. That's why I'm taking it." His face changed then, just a flicker. The first time I had ever seen real fear on a Veil face. I think, and I have thought about this for a long time, in what time I have had, that he had been about to say something else. That he had been about to tell me what he was carrying. That if he had finished that sentence, everything that came after would have been different. But the sirens started. Not the settlement sirens. Higher, older. A long thin keening from the fring itself, the kind of sound the Veil made when one of their executive transponders went dark. The sound that meant a reclaimer was coming. I had heard about reclaimers all my life. We told stories about them. Children told stories about them. They were the Veil's correction units. The ones the Concord pretended did not exist, kept on retainer for things that polite occupation forces did not do. We had a word for them in the old tongue, a word my grandmother used to spit on the ground after she said it. We jacked Castellan into the uplink. Espinosa did it. I was busy with the bleeding. The download took 90 seconds. Castellan died in the 82nd one, and I would like to say I felt something about that. But I didn't, and pretending otherwise would dishonor Tomas, who was already cold in the dust 10 meters away. Then the Reclaimer's ship came down on us out of the dusk. It came down without lights. It came down silent, the way the Veil's best ships came down, the way a knife comes into a room. It hit the access road and the back ramp dropped and a single figure walked out of it, and that was Krell. Krell was Veil, but not the way Isser was Veil. He was bigger. He had grown up on the bright side of some other world, on the side that cooked. And his skin was the color of old leather, and his hair was the color of dust, and he was wearing an exo-frame that was not bolted to him, because the Veil did not need to bolt their frames on. Theirs grew into the nerves the proper way, the way ours never would. He had a katana strapped to his back, an old pattern monomolecular blade, Concord issue, the kind that cut through ceramic plate like soft cheese, and a set of throwing stars at his hip, and a small flat shield generator on his forearm that put a faint blue shimmer around him when he moved. He looked at me. He looked at the bodies. He looked at Castellan, slumped against the transport with the uplink still trailing from his ear. "That was an executive," Krell said. His voice was light, almost friendly. He spoke our language better than most Veil, with a slight lisp on the S sounds because his teeth were filed. "He's not anymore." "No, he isn't." Krell drew the katana. It made no sound at all. "I would like the data you took, please." "I don't have it. It is in your skull. Then come and get it." He smiled. He had a smile like a cut. "I don't believe in committing violent acts in front of children," he said. "But I see no children here, so we will be quick." Espinosa got off 2 shots before Krell crossed the distance between us. The shield ate both of them. The katana came around in a flat horizontal arc, and Espinosa, who I had hated since I was 16 and loved since this afternoon, was suddenly in 2 pieces on the road, the top of him sliding sideways with a look of mild surprise still on his face. I ran the way an animal runs. I went over the transport and down the embankment into the drainage canal, and along the canal toward the settlement, with my exo-frame screaming where the bone anchors had not yet fully fused, and the dust in my mouth and my sister's watch banging against my thigh inside my pocket. Behind me I could hear Krell whistling. Actually whistling, a small bright tune, the kind a man whistles when he is doing a job he enjoys. I made it 3 kilometers before I went down. He found me in the shell of an old church, on the eastern edge of the settlement, where the cherry trees the Veil had planted as a joke about Earth had gone to seed and grown wild. They were in bloom because they were always in bloom, because the veil had engineered them never to stop. Pale pink petals on the dust. Pale pink petals in the wind. Pale pink petals on Krell's leather skin as he came down the aisle of the church with the katana out and his shield humming. "This is a pretty place to die," he said. "I chose it for you. Don't say I never gave you anything." I had a length of rebar in my right hand and an industrial cutting torch in my left, and the frame in my bones doing what it could, which was not enough. I knew it was not enough. I think Krell knew it was not enough. I think that was why he was smiling. "You ever wonder," I said, and my voice was thin because there was blood in my throat from the run, "why they send your kind down here?" "I do not wonder." "I know. Tell me." He stopped. He cocked his head. The third lid slid across his eyes and back, slow. "Because you are biomass with paperwork," he said, "and occasionally the paperwork misfiles itself and grows ambitious. And I am the correction. That's not why. No, they send your kind down here because they're afraid of us. They have a station the size of a small moon, and they have shields, and they have med pods, and they have the cleanest water in the system. And they're afraid of a man with a pipe in a dead church. Because they know in the part of them they don't talk about, that if we ever stop being afraid of dying, they're done. They've already lost. They're just running out the clock." He looked at me a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a real laugh. The first real veil laugh I had ever heard. "That was a very good speech," he said. "I will tell it to my superiors. Now please hold still." The katana came down. I did not hold still. I caught the blade on the rebar, and the rebar parted. Of course it parted. The blade was monomolecular, and the rebar was just iron. But it parted at an angle, and the angle was enough to put the tip of the katana 6 centimeters off where Krell had wanted it, and instead of going through my heart, it went through my shoulder, where the bone anchor of the exoframe caught it and held it the way a vise holds a nail. For a half-second, Krell could not move the blade. In that half-second, I jammed the cutting torch under the lower edge of his shield emitter and pulled the trigger. The shield did not stop heat. The veil had never bothered to engineer it for heat. Why would they? They didn't fight in factories. The emitter went up. The shield went down. The katana came free of my shoulder in a wet sound, and Krell stepped back with one arm suddenly hanging wrong, and a look on his face I would remember for the rest of my life, which was not going to be long. He was surprised, genuinely. For the first time in maybe a century of his life, a piece of biomass with paperwork had done something he had not expected. I hit him in the face with the rebar. He went down. He came back up. He came back up fast, faster than a man with one good arm had any right to, and the katana was in his good hand now, and the smile was gone, and he was on me before I had finished swinging again. I will not pretend the fight was beautiful. It was not. It was two men in a ruined church under cherry blossoms doing ugly things to each other for ugly reasons. And at the end of it, Krell had opened me from the bottom of my ribs to my hip, and I had gotten one hand around the back of his skull where the implant interface was, where the veil grew their armor into their nerves, and I had pulled. I do not know if you have ever pulled the spine out of something that was still alive. I had not, until that moment. I do not recommend it. He made a sound when it came free. The shield went out for the second time and stayed out. The katana fell on the petals and made no sound, the way it had made no sound when he drew it. He looked up at me. The third lid slid across his eyes one last time and did not slide back. "You," he said, "are not what we were told you were." "Yeah," I said, "we get that a lot." Then he died. Espinosa's people found me in the church an hour later. There were 3 of them left, including a woman whose name I had never learned. And they put me on a flatbed cart, and they took me to the launch site, and they put me in the smuggler ship that had been waiting for Castellan's body, the ship that had been bought with the rest of my sister's life. And they fired me up at the ring. The ring was beautiful from below. I had never seen it close, none of us had. It hung above the dusk line of Tharsa like a thin, bright wheel, and as the ship climbed, the wheel got bigger and bigger until it filled the whole sky, and I could see the green inside it, the actual green. Not the green of the picture in the watch, but a moving green fields and forests and rivers turning slowly with the spin. I could see clouds. I could see a lake. I had not known there were lakes up there. I had blood in my mouth and a hole in my side and the watch in my hand, and I sat in the smuggler ship and looked at the lake on the ring, and I thought, this is what they have. This is what they had. The whole time. The ship docked at a maintenance port on the underside of the ring because that is how a smuggler ship docks at a Concord station. There were 2 veil guards at the port, and they were not reclaimers, and they were not ready. And Espinosa's woman shot them both before they had finished asking why the manifest didn't match. We went through the door. We went through the access corridor. We went through a service hatch into a garden, an actual garden, with real grass and real trees and real sun coming down from a real-looking sky, and I stopped for a half second because I had never stood in grass before, and then we kept moving. The data core was at the heart of the ring. It was a room shaped like the inside of an eye, with one great curved wall of liquid memory and one chair at the center, and the chair had a cable that went into the back of a man's skull, and the man could be anyone. But the cable would only accept a download from a uplink with executive clearance, which I had because Castellan had given it to me. In the 82nd second of his life, there was an alarm going. There had been an alarm going since the maintenance port. There would be veil security here in minutes. Real security, the kind that would not be surprised by a cutting torch and a piece of rebar. I sat in the chair. Espinosa's woman plugged the cable into the back of my skull. It hurt less than the bone anchors had hurt. Almost nothing hurts as much as bone anchors. Mateo, she said, there's something you should know. What? This isn't just citizenship. Castellan wasn't just carrying citizenship data. What is it? He was carrying a full system rewrite. The reason a reclaimer came for you. The reason they sent Krell personally. Castellan was. He was going to redefine the parameters. He was going to push the line down. He was going to make more of us biomass. He was going to expand it. I closed my eyes. What happens if I push it the other way? What? If I take what he was going to do and I flip it? If I push the line the other way? What happens? She was quiet a long moment. Everyone, she said. Every human in the system. Every settlement, every labor colony, every dust farmer on the dark side. The med pods register them, the transport registers them, the ring registers them, everyone gets in. Everyone. And me. You're already in the chair. The chair reads the operator's biometrics during the upload. If a non-citizen pushes a citizenship rewrite, the system treats it as a hostile injection and burns the operator out. To stop exactly this. To stop exactly what you are about to do. So I die. Yes, you die. I thought about it for about as long as it takes a man to breathe in once, maybe less. I have thought about it for longer since, in the time I have had, and I cannot honestly say I was making a decision. A decision is something you can go back on. This was something else. I asked Espinosa's woman for the radio. She had a short range patched into the smuggler ship, which was patched into Espinosa's old container, which was patched into the free clinic at Settlement 7. I had her open the line. Freya, a long pause. The signal was bad. Then Mateo. Oh God, Mateo, where are you? I'm in the chair, Freya. What chair? The chair. Up there. On the ring. She was crying. I could hear it. The women of the Terminator strip cried sometimes when there were no children watching. Mateo, come home. Just come home. Whatever you've done is enough. Come home. Freya, listen to me. Is Lena there? She's right here. Yes, she's right here. Tell her I had her watch. What? Tell her I had my sister's watch. Tell her there's a picture in it. Of a place that was blue and green. Tell her she's going to see one of those soon. A real one. Not just in a picture. Mateo, what are you doing? Tell her, Freya. She was quiet a moment. Then I heard her say it. I heard her say it to her daughter, in the voice the women of the Terminator strip used when they had to tell their children the true things. I heard Lena say what? Mama, in the small bright voice of a child who was almost dead and didn't know it. And I heard Freya say it again, and I heard her start to understand what I was doing, and her voice broke and she said, Mateo, no. No. No, you don't have to. Tell her I said the picture was real. Mateo, tell her, Freya. I closed the line. The veil security was at the door. I could hear them. Espinosa's woman had her rifle up. She would not last long. I put my thumb on the upload. I had time while it was running to take the watch out of my pocket. I had time to open the lid. I had time to look one more time at the small pressed picture of old Earth, blue and green and impossible. The picture my sister had given me with her hands shaking. The picture she had told me one day a man like me would need. I had time to think about Lena with a gap in her teeth, and Freya in her doorway with the kitchen knife, and Espinosa laughing with me for the first time in 26 years, and Tomas in the dust on the access road with his hands at his throat, and Castellan's flicker of fear in the half-second before he said the thing he had been going to say. I had time to think about Krell, lying in the cherry petals, with the third lid stopped halfway. You are not what we were told you were. No, I thought. We aren't. We never have been. You just couldn't see us. Because to see us you would have had to stop being afraid. And you were never going to stop being afraid. Because we are what you have always been afraid of. We are the thing that does not stop. We are the heartbeat. We are the heartbeat, and you cannot stand inside it. You cannot stand inside it. Because you have never been hungry, and you have never been cold. And you have never had a sister who told you to keep a watch with a picture of a world inside it. And you have never gone into a room full of light because the line could not stop. And you have never sat in a chair and pushed a button knowing what it would do to you. We always have. The upload finished. I felt it the way you feel a wave going out. I felt every name on Tharsa being written into the system, every dust farmer, every labor colony inmate, every child with a tube in her arm, every grandmother spitting on the ground, every one of us all at once redefined. Citizens. The word made no sound, but I felt it the way you feel a bell. Then the chair started to burn me out. It was not a bad way to go. It was not in the end worse than the cure chamber. I had time. I had the watch open in my hand. I had time to look at the picture one last time, and I had time to think that maybe my sister had been right after all, that one day a man like me had needed it. And the man was me, and the day was today. Below, on the dark surface of Tharsa, a fleet of small white ships that no one had ever seen before lifted from the ring on automatic dispatch. Concord Emergency Response Protocol triggered the moment the citizen registry expanded, and they flew down through the dusk towards Settlement 7 and Settlement 12, and the labor colonies on the dark side, and the dust farms on the bright side, and every place a human being was dying. In the free clinic at Settlement 7, a med pod the size of a coffin descended out of a hatch on a white ship and opened in front of a small girl with a tube in her arm, and a medic with tears on her face lifted the girl into it, and the lid closed, and 11 minutes later the lid opened, and the girl sat up and breathed for the first time in her life without it hurting. In her hand somehow, Freya had given it to her. In the 11 minutes in case was a brass watch with a scratched lens. She opened it. She looked at the picture inside. Blue and green and impossible. Outside through the clinic window, the dust was settling. The dusk was the same color it had always been. The ring was still turning. But the white ships kept coming down, and they kept coming down, and they did not stop. And somewhere on Tharsa, for the first time in 100 years, a parole drone was looking up at the sky and trying to figure out what to do with itself. Because the people it had been built to watch had all just been reclassified, and it had no instructions for that. The girl held the watch up to the window. She held it up to the dusk. She held it up the way a person holds up a small light to see if anyone else is out there. And the answer, from 100,000 windows across the Terminator strip, was that there was. There always had been. We had just been waiting for someone to write us in.